Hello and welcome to your first lesson in geometry. So we're in chapter 1, lesson 1, and your learning target for today is that you will be able to define points, lines, and planes in geometry and use those accordingly. So, undefined terms, points, line, and planes, are considered the building blocks of geometry. Kind of like the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, is your building blocks of your language that we all speak. And there are different alphabets and different languages. So these building blocks of points, line, and planes are the most basic figures that we have. They are actually not really be able to be defined in terms of anything that is previously defined. So it is the starting point for those. So in here, we have point. And the characteristics of a point are such that they name a location. They have absolutely no size, so they are not considered dimensional, like one-dimensional or two-dimensional. There is no size to it, no matter how big the dot is, and it's represented by a dot. So the diagram here, you can see that that is point P, and that is just considered point P. A lot of times we don't write that word point, but we just do it with the capital letter. The big thing is every time you have to use a capital letter. You cannot use a lowercase letter to name a point. So we have point. The next thing we have are lines, and some characteristic of lines is that they are one-dimensional. So it is a straight line, it is one-dimensional, it is a straight path. You don't need to say straight because all lines are straight. There's no thickness to them, and they extend forever. So some different ways that we can name a line, and one of them is to use the letters AB or BA. Those name the exact same line. Typically, we like to do it alphabetically, so we would have the capital A first and then the B second, or BA. A second way to name a line is to write the word line, and then we use a lowercase cursive letter. Lowercase cursive letter to name a line. And the last one that we have here in our building blocks is a plane. So the line is one-dimensional, and a plane is two-dimensional. It is a flat surface such as the floor or the ceiling or a wall, and it has no thickness to it. If you add thickness to it, it becomes three-dimensional. So length and width is what a plane is. All right, here. See if I can move the screen up a little bit. So you can see the plane here. You can see the points A, B, and C are on the plane, and then you can barely see this other letter in the corner here. So I'm just going to rewrite it up here. So it could be a capital cursive letter W. So the way you name a plane, there's two ways. One way is to call it plane W and just use that capital cursive letter. Basically, if you put a curly Q and you make it a capital letter in cursive, I'll give you credit for it. A lot of kids are not 100% sure how to write some cursive letters, so that's fine. And the second most important is to write the word plane, and then you need to have three non-collinear points, so A, B, C. So if I had another point on here, and let's just call it D, and I put a D here on the end, I would mark that wrong on a test. Because on a test, or anytime you name a plane, it is only three non-collinear points. So if you wrote plane A, B, C, D, yes, all of those points A, B, C, D are on that plane. You cannot have four letters. So you can only have three. Plane, and they're all capital letters because they are points. All right, so here we have a plane. The outer boundary here is just representing that we have a plane. And you can see here in this plane, we've got some solid lines and some dotted lines. So if you look in here, we've got this, if named two others for PQ, that says line PQ. So if we find PQ, another way would be to call it QP. And we need the double marks on it for it to be a line. And another way to name this would be this lowercase cursive, and so write line, and lowercase cursive would be that line N. Two other names for plane R. So you can see plane R, they don't quite have that curly Q in the corner, but you would have to have this curly Q in the corner to call that plane R. So if we have to name it two other ways, we're going to name plane, and we need 3 capital letters that are in the plane. So S, V, and T would be one way. We could say plane, P, T, and V. I cannot say plane points S, P, and T because those are in a straight line, so those are considered collinear points. So we could not use those to name a plane. They have to be non-collinear. I think we must have skipped that screen somehow. So collinear points lie on the same line. Coplanar points are points that lie in the same plane. Collinear and coplanar. So to name a plane, we need 3 non-collinear points. 3 non-collinear points. Okay, that's the big thing. They have to be non-collinear in order for it to be a plane. So 3 collinear points. Now, if we're looking at this, and some of you are thinking I can use N, Q, and P, N is not a point. N is naming that line. Just like this M is naming that line. So you can't say M, T, and P, but 3 collinear points, we can use S, P, and T. S, P, and T are considered collinear points. 4 coplanar points would be like S, V, P, T. M is not a capital letter. Q is not in the plane. So if you think about a wall, or if you were thinking about being in my classroom, you could see points, anything I draw on the chalkboard, you could see. So if I tried to take an arrow, and I know it doesn't really, but if I try to take an arrow or pencil or stab it through something, and part of it's in my room and part of it's in Mr. Molo's room, that is what this line right here is representing. It's showing us the part right here. This would be in my classroom, and this dotted line part would be what's in Mr. Molo's classroom. You would know that that line would still continue to go through Mr. Molo's classroom, but we can no longer see it because we've got that plane in front of us. So in this particular case, that point Q would be considered to be in my classroom because that's a solid line. And if I put a point over here and call it J, that point J is in Mr. Molo's classroom. We know it's still there, but you cannot see it. All right, a postulate or an axiom is something that we accept to be true. We cannot prove it. There are not things before it that happened that we can prove it to be true. So some different axioms and things that we have are segments, lines. So this is a segment, and with your segment, it has 2 endpoints, and we write that with 2 capital letters with a single bar across it. Okay, the next one, this is just representing an end point, and this end point is A, and so this would just be, and I usually abbreviate writing the word point with PT, so this is point A. This next one here is a ray, and a ray has 1 endpoint. It's part of a line that it extends forever in 1 point. So if you were looking in my classroom, actually if you look at the flag that's in here, it has an endpoint and the end of it goes on forever. So when you name these, you must name the point first. So AB is the correct way to name it. If you try to name it BA, that would get marked incorrect, because if you look at B, that's saying B is the endpoint and it goes forever in the direction of A. Well, we don't have an arrow off of A, so that is not the correct way to name that. And then this last one here, is called opposite rays. You can't see that last word, but these are considered opposite rays here. So it's two rays that have a common endpoint. So they have a common endpoint of y, and they extend forever in both directions after that. So the two rays that this is made up from is ray YZ. So we have one point with an arrow on the end, and the other ray would be considered YX. The endpoint starts at Y and goes forever in the direction of X. So segments have no arrows on the end. Lines would have arrows on both ends, and a ray only has an arrow on one end. All right, what do we have going on here? Well, it looks to me like we have two lines that are intersecting in a point. So another name for GH, that is a segment. So we can just flip those letters and say another name would be HG. All the rays with endpoint J. So we're going to have JE, JG, JF, and JH. Okay, and make sure that you put your marks on it. J, notice I put J first for all of them, and they go forever in the other direction. All right, are they all opposite? So are all four of these considered opposite rays? Well, let's see here. JF and JE. JF and JE are considered opposite rays. But if you compare JE to JG, they are not opposite rays because they do not go opposite of each other. All right, so we have a couple drawings here that we're going to try. Sketch two lines that intersect in exactly one point. So this, you need the arrows on the end to tell me that they are lined, and then to extend in one point, we can label that. Now, how you choose to do this, you could put points on here to name this line, or you could just use a lowercase letter. So in that case, I called it J. So that has two lines, arrows on the end, intersecting in one point. Okay, that shows a line in the plane. So here's my plane, and here's my line. Now, I know it's extending beyond, and that's A, and this is B. That line is in the plane because remember, the plane goes forever in both directions. Most kids are just going to draw something like this so the plane actually stays in. But if it is solid like this, and I put a letter outside, that B is still in that plane because remember, those boundaries extend forever. Okay, so either one of these are going to be correct. Okay, lowercase, arrows on both ends, that shows that we have a line. Now, if I change that line to through, going through the plane, now my sketch is going to look different. So you have to make sure that you have a dotted part. The dotted part is what's telling me that it is going through, whether I extend it or not. So the dotted part is telling me the through part. All right, sketch a plane that shows two lines intersecting in one point, but only one of the lines is in the plane. So here's my plane. I'm going to name my plane R, putting some curly cues on the end of it. So there's my plane. Now I'm going to draw two lines, and I am going to make part of this line dotted. That is telling me that that one is not in the plane, but going through the plane. Only one of the lines is in the plane. So I am calling line K is in the plane, arrows on the end, solid. And I'm calling the other one line M, and M is not in the plane, it is going through the plane. All right, so that brings you to your homework assignment, and your homework assignment is online, so go to your Big Ideas book, and it is lesson 1-1. So the same place you found your homework last week, go to your Big Ideas, log in, and good luck. Re-look at the video if you need some more pointers. Have a good day.